In this video, we continue our discussion on Chapter 2, where our topic will be supply. In today's video, make note of the concepts of supply, as well as the difference between a change in quantity supplied versus a change in supply. To begin, we are developing our explanation on price and quantity within a market, where we're using the product market for a single good or service as our base case, where we want to explain why is it that for a particular good, so much of it is made, and why is it being sold at a particular price. In order to do this, we are fleshing out our ideas on buying and selling behavior, where last time we developed buying behavior through demand by looking at how consumers buy a particular good or service. Now we want to flesh out selling behavior, which is done by firms in the product market for a single good or service. And this is going to be through supply. Okay. So what makes a firm want to make as well as sell a good or service? Let us see what we can reason by working through things backwards. Well, a firm sells some number of a good at some store at some price. In order to have done that, the firm had to place some number of that good on a store shelf. For that good to make its way to a store shelf, it had to have been made. Well, in order to make a good, the firm had to use factors of production, and those factors of production needed to be purchased. Well, in order for that to have occurred, a firm wants to begin making and selling a good. So some individual or individuals had an idea, brought factors of production together, and want to make and sell a good. Okay, so this seems like a pretty reasonable chain. Let us tack on an assumption and see what else we can say. Well, assuming that a firm wants to make the most amount of profits possible, what can we say? Where profits is going to be the difference between revenue and cost. Revenue is going to be money in to the firm, so the amount that they earn from selling a good or service, where costs is going to be money out, the amount that they are paying to produce a good or service, so paying for the factors of production. So for a good or service, it takes money to make that good. That good is then sold at some price. So it seems pretty reasonable that a business may want to make a comparison. What price can they sell that item compared to its cost to make? Where if price is less than cost, the business is earning negative profits, which doesn't seem like something they would want. So this may not be worth it for them to make. Whereas if price was equal to cost, they'd be breaking even. So they may be indifferent, and so that seems like something they would want to pursue. And if price was greater than cost, they'd be earning positive profits, which is something that they would want. So then it needs to be worth it to the business. And what this means is that they need to be at least breaking even to consider producing a good or service. The other thing, and this is going to generate willingness. The other thing is, well, the business also needs to be able to make the good or service in question. In order for that to occur, they need to have enough factors of production. They need to have the factory, the equipment, material, and workers in place to be able to make the amount that they want. Putting this all together then, we can define a notion of supply. Supply is going to be the ability and willingness to produce and sell specific quantities of a good at various prices, holding all other factors constant. Where the factors that we observed, where the first one being ability, having enough factors of production to produce, willingness, it needs to be worth it to the firm, where This is based on their comparison. A business is in business to make profits, so the price that they charge needs to be at least as much as it costs to make that item. And they're also going to be looking at price because that's in part of their comparison in terms of price to cost. So amount, good, sold for. So these are the three factors that describe selling behavior. We have a definition of supply in place. The next thing we want to do is to be able to put this in a graphical format. The way that we can do this is by generating a supply curve, and its behavior is going to be governed by the law of supply. The quantity of a good supplied in a given time period increases as its price increases given no other changes. So suppose that we have some business, and in terms of our graph, this is going to be like the demand curve. Notice that price is on the vertical axis, quantity is on the horizontal axis. In terms of our factors of supply, we said that there was ability, there was willingness, and there was price. We have quantity and price that we can directly observe. Ability and willingness are also present, however, we can't keep track of them like we do price and quantity. So that's going to bring up the difference between a change in quantity supplied versus a change in supply, just like we did with demand. A change in quantity demanded versus a change in demand. Okay, but with that in mind, all right, so for supply, once again, like demand, we need both ability and willingness. So suppose that some business is able and willing to supply a Q2 amount of a good at a price of P2. If they're able to charge a higher price P3, well, in terms of the comparison, price versus cost, if cost is staying the same and price goes up, we should expect to see an increase in quantity supplied, giving us point C. And this movement from point B to C, quantity supplied responding to a price increase, gives us movement on the supply curve, defines a change in quantity supplied. Whereas on the other hand, due to some conditions, if we were at price P2 and we were the business and we had to charge a lower price, say P1, well, if we're comparing price to cost and everything else is staying the same, price has gone down, we're going to be less willing to produce. So we should expect to see a fall in quantity supplied, giving us point A, giving us movement from B to A, which is once again a change in quantity supplied, movement along the supply curve due to a change in price. Quantity supplied responding to price. And then this gives us points A, B, and C, which is an upward sloping curve or the supply curve, and shows that as price increases, quantity supplied increases, or that there's a positive relationship between price and quantity. This is different than the demand curve where we saw there was a negative relationship between price and quantity. If I'm a consumer and something I like becomes more expensive, I'm going to want less of it. Whereas from the business standpoint, if they can charge a higher price, they have the opportunity to make more money. That goes with their wants of making profits. So they're going to want to make more of that item. So we have dual interests in terms of how we respond to price. Okay, the last thing that we want to talk about is a change in supply. This is going to be a shift in the supply curve due to something other than price changing, where, like what we did with demand, I'm going to give us an example of ability and willingness. We have our three factors. If price changes, that's a change in quantity supplied. A change in demand, this has to be due to ability or willingness changing. For our generic graphs, we're charging a price of P2 at B with quantity supplied at Q2. Same thing here at P2, quantity supplied is Q2. So in terms of ability, suppose that worker productivity, whoops, looks like I can't spell today. Productivity has increased. So our workers have gained more experience. With that experience, they have learned how to do their jobs a bit faster. So we're using the same workers, but they're able to get more done in the same amount of time. All right. With more productive workers, ability increases. With price staying the same, then we should expect to see a rise in quantity supplied. Well, on our graph, if this is S0, to represent our original supply curve, we have price and we have quantity. Quantity has changed, price does stay the same, but ability has changed. So then what we can do is we have an entire shift of the supply curve. And in this case, to the right, and I'm drawing some arrows showing that, and I'm making my label from S0 to S1. And then in terms of our willingness example, suppose that the cost to obtain materials for our good or service has gone up. So in our comparison, if price is staying the same and cost to make our goods or services has gone up, if cost goes up, price stays the same, we are going to be less willing. And put material cost here. And then if we're less willing, at the same price, we're going to see a decrease in quantity supplied. So at the same price, P2, we're going to be making a Q1 amount. And the way that we can show this is price is staying the same, quantity is responding, ability has changed, and we're going to see a leftward shift in the supply curve. So that's S1, this is S0, and then this is a leftward shift in supply. With that in mind, where we'll pick up next time is we will put supply and demand together on one graph.